Did you enjoy the sound effect of me sipping loudly?
I was not fully paying attention, so no, because I was not paying attention.
Okay. Hello, gentles and ladymen. I'm Ulan Gaming, and I'm joined by Platypus Slayer.
Hey,
That was a very uninspired. Hey, why don't you try that again?
that's as inspired as it gets. I'm only inspired slaying platypi.
You're just like, hey. Hey. We're doing an artillery tier list, going through my series once again. Now, this was the first ever tier list I ever did before, and it really shows when I go back and watch the video. I had a couple problems with it. There were a lot of things that were either A or S tier, and I want most of the list to be in the B tier so that it's more indicative of actual canon's quality compared to each other. And yeah, just overall, there are also a couple missing icons and cannons, and I haven't separated too many things out in different civilizations yet when I think they should have, so we are fixing that here today. Yeah, so that's pretty much that's pretty much our intro. Now let's get this thing started. Alright, let's start with just the Falconettes. We'll go through all the Falconettes first, I think. Does that sound good to you, Platt?
Sounds like a plan.
Alright, the generic Falconet for every civ that has a Falconet that is not Ethiopia, or Hausa, Germany, or Malta. I'm gonna go ahead and put the Falconet in A tier. It is just... It's the poster boy of cannons. It's available in Age 3, it does well against infantry, it does okay against buildings, there's like... It's the poster boy of cannons, you know, you gotta pay respect to the poster boy of cannons.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is essential for almost any European Age 3 and up composition is to have some sort of falconet.
Mm-hmm. I should probably mention, by the way, that I actually recorded this whole thing by myself earlier, but lost the entire recording, so I have a basic idea of where I'm going to put everything in the tier list. So, yeah, no, the Falconet is basically just the everyday man's cannon, and it has an incredible amount of utility, and there's really no reason to put it at anything below it.
Great.
Alright, now for the Malta cannon, I'm going to put this in B tier. Because the Malta cannon, Malta does not have a 2 Falconet shipment, which really hurts them in Age 3. They kind of make up for it by having a 4 Falconet shipment in Age 4. But other than that, the Malta have a lot of heavy infantry units, and as such, cannons play a somewhat important role in their military as the game goes on. And I think that's an important note. So, even though their cannons aren't as good, they're still important for the civilization, so I'm putting it in the B tier.
And of course, too, they are affected by the HP bonus that Malta gets. So as
I
the game
forgot
goes
about
on, they will scale very highly. But you're right, the lack of a 2 Falconet shipment and 1v1s in particular is really difficult to overcome for any civ.
I actually... See, that's why you're here, is to go over things that I forget. Thank you.
No problem.
Alright, now, the Germany Falconet, I'm just going through all the Falconets first. The Germany Falconet I'm putting in C tier. Like Malta, they have no 2 Falc shipment, but unlike Malta, they don't have a musketeer type unit. They have a skirmisher and a unique goon, as most of their army comp in Age 3, so it's not as important for them to get Falconets. So taking all that into mind, I just think that Germany Falconets are, you know, among the worst types of Falconets.
Yeah, and especially like with Germany, if you're doing well, you typically have a large Ulan mass, which should just absolutely cut any skirmishers to ribbons. You know, again, late game when your Ulans kind of drop off in efficiency, you'll see more cannons, or if you're doing like a DOP thing. But in general, yeah, they're not as integral to the identity of the Civ as they are for many European Civs.
Yeah. And lastly, for Ethiopian Hausa, I have to put them in D. They have no Falconet shipments. In order to train Falconets, it requires like a 300 export tech, and then all of the cannons require 500 influence per cannon from there. It's not good. Like, it's still a Falconet, but, like,
yeah.
what did it cost you? You know?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it feels like they can get a lot of them though, and that can definitely surprise you. So eh, they do shadow tech, I believe, as well. So there's some corner case uses, but yeah, typically the African civs have such strong other options to use their influence on. You're not going to see those very often.
Yeah. I'm gonna go through like all the Falconette types first. I think is how I'm gonna order this. So our next Falconette type that we're going to be going over is the Heavy Cannon, which serves as the Haudenosaunee Falconette and Culverin hybrid.
You mean the light cannon?
Yeah, the light cannon. I previously put the light cannon in S tier. However, I'm actually going to put them in A tier in this video. And the reason is because Haudenosaunee, the only two civilizations that that have access to the light cannon are Haudenosaunee and Inca. Inca only get 4 of them through a big button. Haudenosaunee can train them, but Haudenosaunee is going to have a harder time affording these when they have to pay for their very expensive forest prowlers with their very average economy. And just because of the availability and the price, just because of the availability and how easy it is, and how like difficult it is to get a good mass of these things going, I have to put them in A tier.
Right. I mean, they're great at what they do, but getting in the industrial age for Haudenosaunee, the Fortress age is a very vulnerable time. That
well, they're available in Fortress. They are available in Fortress. They're not.
No,
industrial.
oh no, they're not.
Wait, what?
They're only available in Age 4.
Okay, I'm putting them in B tier.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so
spoiler.
Spoiler, most Age 4 cannons will Age 4 restricted cannons will be in B tier or below. Just saying that now.
Yeah, no, it's a hole in the Haudenosaunee game plan. It's one of the reasons you do see them rush so vigorously is because once cannons are out and you got a bunker of pikes or halbs or musketeers, it becomes very difficult for the slow side forest prowlers and cav only armies of Haudenosaunee to be able to deal with it. So once you come out, I mean, yeah, your Cove, Falconette, Mortar in one, it's an amazing, with no unpacking. Yeah, it's fantastic, but there's this awkward time gap to get to them that often is the death of the Haudenosaunee player.
It could really be an Age 3 unit. Like, seriously, what the hell?
Yeah. I wish they at least had a shipment like the Chinese get the Crow.
Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about the other version of the light cannon, which is the Flaming Arrow, which is basically the same fucking artillery, but for Japan. And this one is going in the S tier. They have some upgrade cards for them, and in addition, you can train them from your Shogun in the middle of the enemy's base, in groups of 10. So, what's not to love? Except everything about Japan.
I think anyone who's played this game long enough has definitely been on the receiving end of a Shogun running into your base, pooping out 10 of these, and just instantly destroying all of your infrastructure.
I had a Shogun do it with mortars by my factories once.
Oh, jeez. Oh. And yeah, they start off in Age 3 as like a cost-effective Falconette, and then in Age 4 they get their, I believe, like multiplier against other artillery.
Yep.
So, they become a light cannon in Age 4, and they wreck just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, S tier.
Now, the organ gun. I'm putting the organ gun in C tier. So the organ gun is a flimsier version of the Falconette that is also cheaper. It costs 100 wood and 300 coin, if I'm not mistaken. And it has very, very similar stats to the Gatling gun, but if I'm not mistaken, it has some trouble switching targets and often wastes a lot of its shots. Does that sound accurate, Platt?
That is correct. It is.
Yeah. So it's supposed to function like the Gatling gun, where it doesn't have much overkill and it goes pop, 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 pop right from one infantry unit to the next. But it tends to just not do that, and so it struggles in a lot of cases to actually counter the thing it's supposed to counter. Even though it's supposed to be a more cost-effective hard counter, it just isn't.
It's also good to know it's actually worse against buildings than the Gatling gun. And unlike the Gatling gun, it replaces the Falconette option for Portugal. So not only is this an inferior Falconette,
Well, USA doesn't have Falconettes either. It replaces Falconettes for USA too.
Okay. Well, regardless, anyone that plays ports would gladly trade this POS for a real Falconette any day of the week. They even against pressure at Age 3, I mean, they're hard to. They'll clean up pikemen. That's about it.
Yeah.
After that, they're just not cost effective.
And unlike that, over on USA's side, I don't think any USA player would want to switch their Gatling guns for Falconettes. We're going to put Gatling guns for USA all the way up in the A tier next to the Falconette. Probably above it, I think. Yeah. So Gatling guns have 30 less attack than the organ gun at base. They also cost 50 less coin. This is a very cheap artillery piece. It's only 100 wood and 250 coin. And other than that, it's like identical to the organ gun in every way in terms of stats. Now, the Gatling gun has the same property of the organ gun, where it's supposed to like fire 6 small shots and then switch targets as it kills units so that it doesn't overkill or anything. But unlike the organ gun, it actually does this. It actually target switches, and so it just fucking shreds entire patches of military. Just in one go. You get your 3 Gatling gun pop, and then you like turn it to a group of musketeers. That musketeer, they're losing like 8 musketeers. There's no getting around that.
No, and I think it would be good to point out too that United States in particular gets cards that buffs them and can ship 3.
Yes, the USA has 1 card that serves as their 3 and 2 Gatling gun shipment all in one. They also have a card called Coffee Mill Guns, which changes the way the Gatling gun fires so that it never has to reload and can just go tut all day long. It's beautiful.
It's true, and it's got to, count for something, but the sound of the Gatling gun is just so much more sexy.
It is very sexy. It is
compared to the organ gun, which sounds like an old sedan backfiring.
It's a good way to put it.
Oh, organ guns.
Alright, now let's talk about the fixed gun, the new Malta cannon. I love the fixed gun, personally. I recognize it's not the best cannon out there. But it is so much fun. So the fixed gun, I'm going to put in B tier. It's like a heavy cannon that you can buy and train in the Third Age, which on paper sounds really, really cool. It's even got like over 2,000 HP and 300 base damage. It's like a legit heavy cannon. The problem, of course, being that it can't move. Now, you can pseudo, quote-unquote, move it by unpacking it and getting all its resources back, and then building it with your explorer in another location. And in fact, that is actually a big point in the heavy cannon, in the fixed gun's favor, is that you don't need to build an artillery foundry in order to get a cannon. You just build it with your explorer, wherever you want, and it's kind of awesome. However, the fixed gun... It does a lot of damage, but it has a minimum range and it can't move. And if it gets caught by your enemy unprotected, there's absolutely nothing that you can do to stop it from breaking down. It also has both the building and the artillery tag, which means it gets shredded in seconds by a Culverin, as it probably should, in all fairness. It also has a negative multiplier against artillery, so you're not really going to be facing pretty much of anything. You're not really going to be beating pretty much any artillery with this thing. It's pretty much just anti-everything else. However, it does have 34 range, and it upgrades to 40 when you get to age 4, and you also have a long-range attack that has multipliers against buildings, like a monitor.
Correct. I was going to say, statistically, this thing does beat a 2 Falc shipment, so as Malta... Something to keep in mind, if you can get some walls in front of it, and you're getting, like, FF'd by Ottomans or Spain, if you can get this thing out and protect it, it will kill both of the Falconettes, especially if they're clumped together, which many players do. However, for some reason, I don't know why, I'll leave that to you because you're the numbers guy. When it hits age 4, it gets longer range, but it seems like artillery scales better against it, especially Culverins. Because in age 4, like 1 Culverin to 2 Culverins can take this thing out.
Well, that's
but in age 3,
that's just because when you get to age 4 and everybody gets their upgrades, the fixed gun doesn't get a damage upgrade. It gets an HP and a range upgrade. Everything else gets damage. It stays at 300 base damage until age 5, where it goes up to 450.
Okay, so then of course, with that and the multipliers causing a bigger chunk, that makes sense. So that's exactly my experience. But yes, with no 2 Falc shipment for Malta, this thing with some clever walling and defenses can stave off a fast fortress. So that does count for something, but I totally agree with everything else you said. It's really awkward to use otherwise, and for the most part, it's just kind of fun to sit outside an opponent's base and dare them to come fight you.
Yes! Oh my god, I love, building this so that it's just in range to, siege their walls or something. and then, like, as soon as nothing's in range of it, I just unpack it and then inch it a little bit closer.
Exactly. Yeah, this is definitely a very fun cannon. Like I said, it may not be the best cannon, but if there was a fun tier, like this thing would be at the top.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It's fucking great. Okay, now let's talk about the heavy horse artillery. Now the horse artillery is faster than the Falconette. It is stronger than the Falconette. It does more damage than the Falconette. It's just everything about the Falconette, but better. Except that it's locked till age 4, so I feel inclined to put it in the B tier.
Right.
And that is really just the problem with it. There's also no real there's also not really many shipments for horse artillery.
Yeah, there's really not, and I would say that the civ that I see this the most with is Dutch, because Dutch can hide them in a Reuter ball, and that that's their 2-unit comp that kind of basically deals with anything. But yeah, it's a great unit, but age 4, that often the match is already decided. So by the time you get these things out, someone is typically already in a commanding position. So yeah, it's a great unit, but too little, too late, kind of often.
And let's talk about the Sebastopol mortar. This is one of the ones I'm actually super excited to get your take on. Sebastopol mortar is, like the fixed gun, it's a heavy cannon in age 3 with some restrictions. In this case, it's that the Sebastopol mortar is slow as fuck and expensive as fuck. And it's a very big loss if your enemy catches it and breaks it down, but it can provide a pretty decent powerhouse. If I'm not mistaken, it has big damage, big splash, and then negative multipliers against things that counter it, right?
Correct. It's got 2 firing modes, too.
I was not aware of that one. But just because of the price and the fact that Ethiopia usually you can never afford more than like 1 or maybe 2 if they're crazy at once. Yeah, especially in like the 3rd age. I'm kind of inclined to put them like no higher than B tier.
Yeah, it also got nerfed recently for pretty much no reason, because it wasn't really dominating the battlefield. Because like you said, Ethiopia, unlike Hausa, struggled to get influence. I mean, they have ways with the Jesuits and stuff, but long story short, this thing's 1,000 influence, and then there's 1 card that sends 1 of them in age 3. So super hard to mass. Their impact is not as big as some of the other heavy, cannons like the Big Boy or the Great Bombard.
Would you say that it's more appropriate to put them in C tier?
I think so. And maybe if there's an Ethiopian player in your comment section that's going to call me out, like, definitely do so. But I can say on the ladder in 1v1s, assuming the Ethiopian player doesn't all-in rush me at, like, 7 minutes, I've never seen more than 1, and it's not that hard to kill.
Mm-hmm. Would you put it below or in between or above the, like, German Falconette and organ gun?
I would say it's above the organ gun, but, the German Falconette still functions as a Falconette. Where this thing
That's true.
Right, where this thing's just you compare this to like a Great Bombard popping and see what raises your blood pressure more.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, the leather cannon. This is going in the A tier for the simple reason it's available in age 2 and for no other reason. It's flimsier. It has less range resistance. It has less damage but a faster rate of fire compared to the Falconette, but it's a cannon in age 2 that pairs with a really, really good musketeer, so I can't justify putting it any lower than A.
And it doesn't need to unpack either, so it moves and fires. You don't have to worry about animations or unpacking. It's cost wood, which sometimes can be awkward with your torps, but when you're trying to mask
all cannons cost wood.
Right, this one's wood and food.
Really? I was not aware of that one.
Yeah, so it's kind of cheap and it complements if you're trying to mass Caroleans. So it's a great unit to mass for Sweden. Sweden doesn't get skirmishers; they get leathers.
Yeah. Sweden doesn't even need to go to age 3. They're just like, oh, you're fast fortressing into Falconettes. Let me just make 5 leather cannons real quick with my Caroleans, and I don't have to age anymore.
Yeah, it definitely is an integral part to the Sweden late age 2 push, and it hurts.
Mm-hmm. I think that covers it for all the Falconette types. Oh, let's go over the Flamethrower. I have found a recent newfound respect for the Flamethrower. It's very good at chasing down infantry. It has some fast movement speed. It also doesn't have the artillery tag, if I'm not mistaken, but instead the siege trooper and infantry tags. Which means it's hard countered by Lancer cavalry and militiamen and minutemen, which is a very difficult thing for everybody except USA to mass, which kind of makes it awkward to counter. And I've found a newfound respect for it recently. Now, it is generally one of the first cannons to go down, just because it's on the front lines compared to every other cannon, which tends to hide behind your lines, but, you know, that's kind of its job. It has a lot of hit points. It's meant to tank and soak up hits for your military. And it's pretty decent. It's not the best cannon out there, because it is obviously limited in its range. But I'm going to go ahead and put it in the B tier. I think just above the Malta Falconette.
I'd agree with this. You know, as a China main, for the longest time, I did not use these too much. But as time goes on, like, especially when you're up against a lot of skirms, right? You know, China sometimes can struggle to mass one type of unit. Mm-hmm. The blockhouse now can make flamethrowers. And, you know, they cost 170 wood and 170 coin. So they are expensive, but like 3 of these bad boys will just melt musketeers and skirms. So they are an absolutely fantastic unit. They scale all the way into the late game. Are they as, you know, ubiquitous as a Falconette? No, but you're not losing out if you're building an army comp that includes these.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're cool. You know, burn people down.
Let's talk about Culverins now. Culverins. Just the standard Culverin. I'm gonna put at the very top of B tier. Oh, that's the flying crow. I got them fucking mixed up. There we go. Okay. The standard Culverin, I'm gonna put at the top of B tier. Culverins are like fighter jets in warfare. Fighter jets, their job isn't to take out the army on the ground below them. Their job is to take out the other fighter jets so that your bombers can take out the army below them. Right? And whoever wins the Culverin War is basically the player that's allowed to use artillery in a fight. And as such, Culverins are very, very important and integral to a lot of civilizations. However, they do not win battles for you. They just enable the rest of your artillery to win battles for you. They're not going to be the first thing you make going into Age 3. That's going to be the Falconette. You know, they're going to be something you add later in your army composition as a specific counter to what your enemy is doing. I think the only reason I'm putting them in B tier is because of their severe importance to most civilizations. What's your take on this position?
Yeah, with these, you know, it depends how late the game is going, right? Like, I think you're absolutely right. Against native civs, for example, there'd be no reason to build one, right? They do marginal damage to buildings. They did improve it in the last patch, but not enough to replace even a Falconette. But in Age 4, especially versus a Euro civ, there's what's called a Culv War, which often happens because artillery can be so integral to a European civ that the opening match is basically the equivalent of enemy at the gates, but with Culverins, sniping at each other, trying to jockey for position. So, you know, like at Age 3, it's often like a C, it's a niche unit, right? Mm-hmm. It's just used maybe to kill some Falconette masses, but when you hit Age 4, especially if you're versus a civ that can mass Gatling camels, even though they nerfed that a tiny bit, Culverins are integral to the late game composition. So I agree, top of B is a pretty solid spot.
Now, the Malta and Italy have Royal Guard Culverins that each have different effects, so I put them separately. And just because they're Royal Guard and the Royal Guard upgrade is like only barely more expensive than the regular one, I'm going to be putting both of these in A tier. Starting with Italy. Italy's Royal has the lesser of the two Royal Guard upgrades. Italy gets plus 35% HP and 25% attack instead of 25 and 25. And I mean, really, that's just one of those threshold things, you know. That's probably an extra Hussar hit before it dies. That might even be an extra Culverin hit before it dies. You never know. But it's you know, a Royal Guard Culverin, it's better than a normal Culverin. I have to put it above it, you know.
I agree. I mean, just simply put, I completely agree with that. That extra damage in HP makes a huge difference, especially in those aforementioned Cold Wars.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Malta has the much better deal of the Royal Guard Culverins. Royal Guard Italy Culverins are called Spring Guards. Malta Culverins are called Basilisks, which is a way better name and prompts it to be an S tier. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna put it above the Leather Cannon though. In Malta have plus 25% HP and plus 35% attack on their Royal Guard upgrade, but the Culverin also benefits from Malta's HP per card bonus, so it gets more than plus 10% HP anyways, and even right from the third age, it's going to have way more HP than any other Culverin on the battlefields. Malta has Culverins that have, like, the highest damage and the highest HP, except for maybe French Culverins after they send the card. Malta just is the king of Culverins in this game.
I agree. As it stands right now, that HP bonus allows you to basically win any Cold War of equal resources. It makes you be able to duel with heavy cannons a lot easier. You know, Falconettes in particular. You know, one of these things can just wreak havoc on Falconet and horse artillery. And because they're tankier, like, it's harder for Dragoons, the usual counter, to get on top of them and actually kill them like fast enough before your own heavy infantry or skirms wreck the enemy's units. So I mean, it's just fantastic. No other way to put it.
All right, now I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on my placement of the Air Knight and Haraka.
Okay.
All right, so the Air Knight I'm putting in S tier. Air Knight is, in my opinion, one of, if not the best, Culverin/Mortar unit in the game. This thing counters buildings, artillery, and ships like nothing else, but unlike the actual Culverin, or a lot of the other Culverin likes, this thing can still put out a steady DPS in an actual fight. Like, it's not going to be, like, enough to win a battle. You know, you're not going to make an army of just Arrow Knights, but unlike the Culverin, you can make an army of Arrow Knights and an army of Eagle Runners, and while your Eagle Runners are fighting, the Arrow Knights can actually add and contribute to the fight in damage. And that's something that the Culverin cannot say. In addition, the Arrow Knight costs food coin, which matches the cost of every single other Aztec unit except for Coyotes and Automaton Slingers, and that's only before you send the Aztec gold card. They also have 30 range and can outrange pretty much every artillery in the game with a couple exceptions, one of them being the Culverin, but they don't have the artillery tag, so other Culverins don't counter them. They are just absolute gods among, like, among mortar artillery equivalents. And they also don't limber and have, like, 3.6 movement speed, which isn't 4, you know, it's not standard infantry movement speed, but it's faster than just about every cannon, you know?
Yeah, you know, these things kind of grow, you know, they need a card, what's that, Scorched Earth or whatever?
Scorched Earth increases their siege damage by 50%, yeah.
Yeah, to kind of scale with cannons, but unlike a lot of native units that kind of fall off in the late game, like, these things are actually pretty solid. When I first started, and I know the general consensus that people have is they're kind of poo-poo on them, but, like, these things en masse, like you said, they'll do damage versus normal units, and they will just absolutely destroy buildings at range, having Culverin range effectively with mortar damage en masse. So
they have a lot of upgraded cards too. They get plus 30% in noble combat cards, and then in addition their support card, which delivers 6 of them in addition to this, boosts their damage by another 20%. And then they of course get Scorched Earth, which increases their siege damage by 50% in the 4th age. These guys just are super upgradable. They don't start out as maybe the strongest, but you also do get a 7 Arrow Knight shipment in age 3, which can serve as your 2 Culverin shipment and just, like, stop any Culverin fast fortress in its tracks.
Right. And then there's, like, a big button too, right?
Yes, there is a big button. I think it's the Noble Hut that has the big button for Arrow Knights. Gives you 1 for every 2 minutes of game time that has passed.
Yeah, they're good. They're S or A tier in my book, I think.
You need about 10 to 15 of them, and then you, like, never have to worry about buildings or boats or cannons ever again, and you can still put out steady DPS in a fight from 30 range away. They are ridiculous.
They are. They're definitely a solid component of any Aztec late game composition.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Haraka, if you had asked me 4 months ago when I did this tier list, I would have put them in the S tier with the Arrow Knight. But I now disagree with that. And this is this is taking the June patch that is coming out that we got through the pup into account. But I'm actually going to put Haraka in C tier now. And the reason there are a couple reasons for this. The first of which being that the fort was nerfed. The fort was nerfed so that the military units have to take 3 whole seconds before they can just hop into the fort, you know? And that prevents the Haraka from doing the thing they were really, really famous for, which is abusing their stupid high damage but low HP to have only the high damage but none of the vulnerability by popping out, taking a shot, and popping back into the fort. That's not really an option now that Haraka can do. And then, in addition to that, their damage got halved, but they received multipliers against the things they counter. So the Haraka is now supposed to be like the Arrow Knight, but with Falconette. So it's like a cold Falconette mortar all in one. But it doesn't have the range to get away with that anymore. It never really did. I think it has 20 or 22 range, which is 2 less than a Falconette, which has 24. And there's no real way to upgrade the range, and in addition, it's the only Inca unit that costs a wood coin, which makes it rather difficult to mass. In addition, in like with everything else that they have, you know, especially because Inca doesn't gather coin the fastest.
Correct. They recently, like I said, they're trying to nerf the ranged attack from 40 to 20, and you know their job was to kill artillery, and they're going to be a lot weaker at that. So I think the issue, you know, I mean, most people would love a grenadier with 20 range, right? Like that would be like a no-brainer.
Yes, but this is supposed to serve as their culverin as well, and it doesn't have the range for it. It always let falconets get the first shot off, you know. And now, in addition to that, they're going to be doing half damage. I think they should also get a multiplier against artillery, not just infantry.
I think they should. You know, people pointed out, and this kind of supports your Arrow Knight thing. Like, people have been crying out, like, just make it like an Arrow Knight.
Mm-hmm. Now, I personally am against that because I love Arrow Knights and I play Aztecs and I want them to be unique and cool so I can brag about how good they are. But you know,
fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. Do you agree with this placement though, C tier?
I think so. I think they'll still have some use. You know, their issue is that Inca now has a hole in its roster more so than the units, you know, objectively worthless, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, let's do the Siege Elephant, because I think that's the last... Siege Elephant and Hand Mortar. Those are the 2 Culverin equivalents left. Okay, the Siege Elephant. I am putting... I might be crazy, and you might be like, what the fuck are you thinking? I'm putting them in D tier.
Interesting.
Now, Siege Elephants they don't have to limber up. Well, they do, but they have no animation for limbering up. They just automatically switch from one to the other. It's really funny. They have a lot of HP. They have a lot of movement speed. They counter both artillery and buildings. And yet they suck. Because although they have a lot of HP, they get countered by everything in the game because they have the light cavalry and the artillery tag. So if anything even remotely scratches the elephant, it takes a lot of damage. One of its biggest threat is actually a big skirmisher mass. Because skirmishers get a ×2 multiplier against light infantry. And in addition to that, it has to get in range of that skirmisher mass in order to fight the cannons, because it doesn't have enough range to outrange a lot of artillery in the game or fire behind your lines. It only has 28 range, which means it has to walk into the fight itself, take a bunch of shots to fire a couple shots at the Culverins, which have already probably shot it once, and then run away with its fast movement speed. And so... you know, it's like, why would I want fast movement speed and high HP when I could just sit outside the enemy's range with the Culverin and shoot from there, you know? And it has a lot of things going for it, but they're just not enough, is what it is.
They're so expensive, both in population and in resources.
Yes, I forgot about the population. They're not population-efficient anti-cannons.
No, they're just, yeah, they're great. So if you can get a mass of these things, yeah, you're going to wreck face, but... The chances are versus a competent opponent that they're going to grind you down cost effectively, and your massive resource investment is just not going to work. You know, India struggles in treaty, they say, And this is one of the major reasons, right? Because treaty often involves a lot of artillery, and when you have subpar artillery, uh, you're just not going to cut it in a treaty game. So yeah, you have 1,400 health. That's amazing, but you're a giant damage sponge, and you're not killing stuff fast enough.
And everything has multipliers against you, so you're not damage sponging very well either.
Exactly. Yeah, with light cav and yeah, just skirms. When your cannons are being countered by skirms, you feel like something's wrong.
Do you agree with this placement though, or do you think they deserve higher? Because I know you went really when I put them in D tier.
You know, I think they do have a niche just because if you can get a ball of them, you know what I mean, going, like if you get enough of these things, yes, they're gonna wreck face. Shout out to our buddy Pharaoh Killer or Pharaoh King, who loves to torment people with elephants on the ladder and in lobbies. But yeah, they're not great. That's for sure. I don't know if bottom is C or straight D. I know for treaty they're D tier. Supremacy, probably outside of team games, D. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the siege elephant is a big reason of why India has such a big problem dealing with artillery, but it's not the only reason. For those of you who don't know, if you're wondering what to do against India in the late game, just spam artillery. They can't do anything against it because their Mahouts are not great against artillery because they're too slow and don't do very much raw damage without their multiplier. The Sours are bad against artillery because they fucking die to it. Because they're just so flimsy. And then the siege elephants are good against artillery, but they have to get in range of the rest of your military to do it. If you mass like 15 Culverins, you know, get a mass of like heavy cannons going, that's how you deal with India. You're just gonna win. India's best anti-artillery is to switch from the British or from the British consulate, with giving up their 10% HP bonus over to the Portugal one and getting Culverins through banner armies.
Yeah. Through the consulate, and it hurts them. I think it's 8% for the Brits, or 7.
It's 10%. It's 10%. I think
they get 10% because China gets 8%. It might just be China things.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was 10%. It might just be 8% though.
So I double check because we can edit this. We'll make you look good. Alliance, blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's 7% for Brits.
Oh, okay. Got it. And lastly is, in the Culverin class, is the hand mortar. The China one pop mortar. I'm gonna put this in the middle of C tier.
What?
Now they are cheap, right? But you can't train them in very big batches. You only train them in batches of 5, which basically means your whole batch is like 1.5 mortar. You know. They do play an integral part, but they also are spread very far apart with their pathing. You know, they're very widespread apart, which makes it very ideal for cavalry to path into them. When you have a unit that makes cavalry path into them efficiently, you have a problem.
Right, but as China, you also hopefully have a giant mass of crap sitting between you and your opponent. I love these things. These things stop fast fortresses dead in their tracks. If you're China, the blockhouse can train them, which is huge because that means the second you can hit fast fortress, which is China has one of the fastest fast fortresses out there, you can put 5 of these and just knock the Piroshiki or the Ottoman fast fortress dead in its tracks, and then just grind down the rest of their military. They're cheap. They cost wood and food. The wood part can be a little bit challenging for China because technically your Age 3 armies tend to be more gold oriented. They have 34 range, so they have the range of a Culv, and they also do building damage. So, you know, again, people tend to bunker up and try to make you fight through their crowded corridors where your banner army numbers don't mean as much. This just nullified. You just sit out their base and just nuke anything down with impunity because they'll beat Culvs cost effectively. They'll beat Falconettes. Heavy cannons can be a problem, but China only gets 2 true artillery or 3 artillery units if you include the flamethrower. This thing really pulls its weight. I cannot think of a ladder game that the opponent was fast fortressing that I haven't been just absolutely happy. I mean, I think this thing deserves to be in the B tier. It's a tool that every China player should be comfortable, you know, when to use it. and when to pop it. But you are right; they pass like morons. They're pretty fat for some skinny dudes with a giant cannon, and they are slow, and I mean slow. So they're definitely not like an A tier unit, but I think they're pretty important for China, given that the thing that kills the giant banner death ball is artillery often. If you're great with your meteor hammers, you can use that too, but most people learn not to leave their cannons within any distance of your um, armies, and meteor flails are hard to mass, where these things are available the second you hit age 3, and typically for a good price. So I think they should be B tier.
Okay, I will listen to you for this, since you are far more experienced with China than I am. I'll put them at the bottom of B tier. I don't think they're like any higher than this though.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, it still serves the same problem of all Culverins / mortar types, where like their job is to let your other artillery do the winning for you. You know.
Yeah, basically, I think it's just the added bonus of the siege too, of being able to knock buildings down.
Yeah.
That kind of gives them a little bit more utility. I would agree. If they were just Culvs or just like mortars, then they would be really bad, and I'd rather just siege stuff down with Changdao. But having both of that, it's pretty nice to bully the opponent, sit outside their base, nuke the artillery down before it touches your territorial banner if you're going infantry. And it's a really solid unit that I don't see every game, but every game I need them, they do their job.
All right, now captured mortars. We're gonna go through the mortars next. Captured mortars, and actually we'll just do the standard mortar first. Standard mortar, available to most civilizations in Age 4. A super long range, 42 fucking range at base on a mortar. And it can only strike buildings, blocked till Age 4. I'm inclined to put it in the C tier. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a very important unit, and it breaks stalemates in the Age 4. But being Age 4, I kind of have to penalize it a little bit for that. And in addition, they are slow as balls and can only strike buildings. They can't strike any other units. They're really good at what they do, but you're wasting a ton of resources and a ton of population for a unit that does really that can only fight buildings, and if anything even remotely scratches them, they're fucked unless they're protected.
Yeah, I think it's a common noob mistake we've all made, unfortunately, where we invest in mortars to try to attack the opponent's base.
You only need like 2 or 3 of them.
Exactly. You pop them. You blow down your opponent's base. You think you're cool, and then their larger army just rolls right through you. And you're like, oh. I was going to point out they can attack ships. So there is.
Oh yes, I did forget about that. They can attack ships.
So can Culverins too. So
yeah, and Culverins do better against ships.
Exactly. So very corner case use there, but something if your opponent's teasing you with a pawned frigate on New England, right? You can just build one mortar and siege it down.
Mm-hmm. It should also be noted that Portugal has the ability to upgrade their range to 50 through a card.
Yes. Oh yeah, the port mortar is a monster. But again, if Portugal's made it that far in the game, like chances are it's probably over it.
Now the captured mortar, this is going at the bottom of C tier. Now this is taking the June patch notes into account, where they're moving the captured mortar from the Imperial Age to the Industrial Age, which is the reason it's C and not D tier. But you still have to pay money at the native embassy for a big button that allows you to train them, and they take up 8 fucking population. 8 population to get a captured mortar. Yes, Lakota have an ability to lower it to 4.
Oh.
I probably should have separated Lakota, because I think for the Haudenosaunee and for the Aztecs, and for Inca, the captured mortar is like D tier, because they don't need it, right? But Lakota does need it, because they don't have any kind of siege trooper now, especially since their siege stance is getting hella nerfed.
Yep.
So Lakota does need it, which is the reason I'm putting it in C tier. But like Aztecs don't need it; they're just gonna make Arrow Knights,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Captured mortars, they have their use, but very, very limited, and that's very, very. It used to be even more so limited because it was the Imperial Age. Because they're no longer Imperial, that's the reason that they're here.
I agree. Maybe with Lakota siege stance being impacted pretty significantly, they might see some more play at 4 pop, but I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see how this Lakota rework lands. So I think for now that's a pretty generous even spot.
And next is the Mortar, which I'm putting at the bottom of B tier, for the simple reason that you can train them in bashes of 10 in the middle of your opponent's base. And that's something that mortars can't do.
Every player that's played this game long enough has that horror story of the Japanese bastard who just runs in with his like trillion HP Shogun, poops mortars out in the middle of everything. And, I mean, in treaty, in team supremacy, 1v1 supremacy, and just wrecks your face. And you're just like, you know, you lose a little faith in humanity.
You do.
You know, and then it's a good unit too. It's not even like that's the only way to deliver them. Like, they're completely serviceable artillery pieces without the ability to teleport up your face.
Now, right? If I'm not mistaken, these things are like mortars in that they can only strike buildings and ships, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Okay, next up is the heavy cannon class. There aren't too many of these. I will say that a lot of them are going to be in like B tier. However, some of them will be higher. The heavy cannon, the generic heavy cannon, I'm gonna put in the B tier. The heavy cannon is a scary fucking cannon. It's like a super Falconette in that even though it's a heavy cannon, it maintains multipliers against infantry instead of just having high base damage with negative multipliers against counters. This thing's got a lot of HP. They're restricted, just like all of these units, in that you can only ship them or train them from your factory once you're in age 4. But you know what? Heavy cannons are really fucking scary, and that's they're limited use. But you know what? They're fucking scary.
Absolutely. Every player's, if they're making a 4th age deck, right? Like 3 cards is Factory 1, Factory 2, if you have them, and then 2 heavy cannons, because these things are definitely game changers. I mean, they hit everything super hard.
Oh yeah, they just really do. Now the Flying Crow, I'm probably going to put below the hand mortar, I think, right here. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, really good unit. It's because they mass so slow.
They mass way slower than heavy cannons, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. You can get them in age 3.
And they have less HP and less damage than the heavy cannon as well.
Correct. They shadow tech every age. Age 3, they're it's not that they're bad, but like it's too hard to get enough of them to make a huge difference typically. Age 4 is different because you have the infinite shipment card, and it's easier to mass them. Like they're like the same thing with the rockets, right? Like if you can mass them, amazing. But because they nuke artillery pretty decently too. But yeah, I agree. They're not in every unit comp. They're not needed often for China's late game, but they definitely can be a stalemate breaker. And if your opponent is trying to mass like the ops or something, oof, these things will just clean house.
Alright, next, the Papal Bombard. I'm going to put below the Malta Falconette in the B tier. Now, the Papal Bombard is crazy cool, and you can get a shipment that delivers 3 of them, which is a lot. Papal Bombards, they do a lot of base damage, and then they have negative multipliers against the things that counter them, just like most of the heavy cannon class. The Papal Bombards in particular, though, they have the deflection aura, which makes them absorb some of the damage from other artillery units around them. And this is really important to how they work, because it means that your Culverins, as long as they have a Papal Bombard near them, will win every single Culverin war without contest. Because some of the damage your enemy Culverins are doing to your Culverins will go to the Papal Bombard. The problem with this, of course, is the enemy doesn't need to kill your fucking Culverins because the Papal Bombard absorbs all the damage. They can just shoot down the Papal Bombard. So your Papal Bombard will let you win all the Culv Wars, but have no artillery in the process.
Right.
Yeah. Which is a bit of an issue. If it was a Culverin that absorbs damage from other nearby artillery, I would be all over this shit. But it's a heavy cannon, and that's the one thing you don't want being damaged. In addition, Italy only has 1 factory, so it's a lot more difficult to train these. You're better off just making resources.
Yeah. Does the gold count for anything though? They are pretty nifty.
Oh, the gold like barrel
trim. Yeah, the gold trim, the bling, the Pope's personal bling. Does that count for anything? No, I agree completely with your assessment there. I mean, it's just like many of the heavy cannons, right? Like, yeah, in a 1v1 basis, they're amazing. Like, in 1v1, like comparing them stat to stat, but actually getting to them, getting them out, and having the same impact that these other cannons can do throughout the course of a game is just not the same.
Mm-hmm. All right, now the Great Bombard, the one that everybody loves. I'm putting it at the top of A tier. It has 5 splash, which is ludicrously high, and it pairs well with the Janissary, and Ottomans can get quite a few of them out pretty quickly.
Yeah, we all know or if you don't know, you should Google the Nizam Fast Industrial, or Riot Coke's Fast Industrial, because oh my god, these things, you can get 3 of them out pretty goddamn fast before other people are still just maybe hitting age 3, and they will absolutely Shrek anything that comes near them. That plus their 2 Great Bombard shipment, I mean, you can get 5 of these things before 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying. I might even put them in S tier. What do you think?
I think A is good because, like, outside of the, like, specific build, but I mean, top of A is great because, yeah, in 1v1 especially, like, there is a win condition that if you let your Ottoman player get 5 of these things out, like, just good luck, dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
good luck
much.
next game.
All right, rockets I'm gonna be putting in the S tier. I am. And the primary reason is because rockets don't have a negative multiplier against cavalry, if you didn't know. And they do like 375 base damage or something, which means a veteran hussar will live with 5 HP. And the rockets will shred everything. They have all the splash of the bombard, but they're not countered by artillery, by cavalry as much. You need culverins in order to take out rockets. And if you let a Brit player make enough of these rockets, in combination with their fucking red coat musketeers that have all of their upgrades, there's nothing you can do. They're just gonna roll over you.
Yeah. These things are definitely like game enders, you know what I mean? Like, if you're fighting Brits, like, there is a timer, or you have to make sure you have Colves, because these things they're deceptive, right? Like 1 or 2 of them is tough, but not necessarily game ending. But like 5, 6, 7, like, just good luck, dude.
Yeah. And lastly, second to lastly, is the USA heavy cannon. Which I'm inclined... I can't decide whether I want to put it at the top of S, or sorry, the bottom of S or the top of A. So heavy cannons for USA are far better than normal heavy cannons because they have 3 cards that affect them. First is Nox Artillery Train, which boosts their HP by a lot and then makes them train faster. They have Indiana Mobilization. If you age with Indiana, that boosts their train speed by another 10%. And then in age 5, if you go that far, they also have Connecticut, which boosts their train time. Again, they have 3 different cards that boost their train time, and you can train a heavy cannon in well under a minute, like, without even like trying. And if you have 2 factories, you are going to be shitting heavy cannons the entire game. And you're going to have them en masse, and your enemy is going to need to make like 10 fucking culverins to deal with it. What they lack for in raw stats, well, except they do have good raw stats because they have almost 600 HP after Nox Artillery Train. They make up for in just pure numbers.
Yeah, no, USA artillery is amazing, and it's one of the reasons USA is so feared in the late game is, again, we've talked about how cannons are, these heavy cannon classes, like a game changer. Like, here's an affordable, quick, and massable, overcoming a lot of the weaknesses of these other heavy cannons' impacts on the game. So,
what do you think? Bottom of S or top of A?
I think top of A is pretty fair, or maybe underneath the Great Bombard, just because.
Yeah, it does take a lot of cards to get to that point. I agree. That's fair.
And it's something, USA, Ottomans can kind of trick you out with their deck, or the United States, like, if you check their deck and you see Nox Artillery, expect these bad boys to roll to your door.
And lastly is the USA Quaker Gun. S tier. Whee! It's no secret that I love the Quaker Guns. I know they're not S tier, but, like, come on, they're S tier.
You know what it is people don't think they're S tier until you've quit a game because either them or Baja, or is it Baja? No, it's is it Baja that gets the Quaker guns, or is it Central America?
No, it's Central America. It's Central America.
Okay, when you think it's over, there's Falconettes. It's like 7 minutes in the game. You're like, how did this happen to me? And then afterwards, you're like, the opponent's like, why'd you quit? They're Quaker guns. It's like, what? And you realize that like those things that were doing damage weren't. If you're ever fighting those two civs, by the way, I think it's if you click the HP of the Quaker gun is different or something.
Yeah, they have 250 base HP no matter what they look like.
That's what it was. Yes, but yeah.
But other than that, there's like really no way to tell, except for the fact that they don't do damage. In Age 4, USA has a Team North Carolina Quakers, which is an infinite sends Team 5 Quaker gun card that you can get, so you can make your 3v3 look like your team just got 15 fucking cannons. It's very terrifying. You can make them look like heavy cannons even. A lot of players will just quit right once they see that. However, what my favorite way to use them is to make them look like Culverins, right? And the reason I like to make them look like Culverins is because, one, it justifies them doing no damage. Your enemy will be less suspicious when they see your Quaker gun doing no damage, because, like, all Culverins do no damage, right? Two, it locks them out of making artillery unless they make Culverins for themselves or make a shit ton of Hussar and Charger Quaker guns, right? And three, if they do make Culverins themselves, they're not going to target your real artillery first, they're going to target your Culverins. And these things just win games for me. Once you get to the 4th age with USA, you can ship Team 5 of these things, and they just win games. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. These are one of those units that, like, if you want to big brain your opponent, like, this is, boy, do we have the cannon for you.
Obviously, they're not actually S tier, but, like, come on, they're S tier.
Right.
They have the cheapest cost. They have the cheapest cost in population of any cannon. 100 wood and 1 pop.
Like I said, if you learn anything from today's list, check the HP of Baja's cannons, or Central America's cannons, and United States cannons, because and again, like, but it is kind of S tier too when you're trying to win a Cove War and half the Coves aren't even real.
Yeah, it's S tier, but it's also not. But it is S tier, but it's not. You know,
it's S tier till it's not, but then it's S tier.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that's gonna do it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me, Platt. This was a lot of fun. I like doing this stuff with people. You know.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
And you helped me remember a couple things I had forgotten about, and yeah. All right. That'll do it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day, and goodbye. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This was, as ever, a ton of fun to make. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider subscribing. It really helps the channel out, and have a great day.